our next panel, really great brands that are going to be represented here. They're going to discuss navigating governance and consent in siloed environments. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Vic Elliott, Amir Neroni, Jared Tibbetts, and our moderator, Christy Burnett.
Hi, good afternoon. We are the last panel for the next break, so we'll start kicking it off. Well, welcome to Telium Town in the digital frontier, where we can see that wrangling data can feel a bit like trying to keep law and order in the Wild West. Teams are spread out, data is siloed, as we've all discussed, and it's tough to ensure that everything stays in line. So much like a sheriff in these towns, it's hard who keeps peace, ensures compliance, and maintains the flow of activity. Telium's here to keep your data organized, compliant, and secure. So let's kick off this session and explore how these leading organizations are navigating this data frontier using Telium. First, I'd like to introduce the panel. We have Vic Elliott, and I'd like to ask a couple questions. So first, Vic Elliott with DirecTV. If governance and compliance had a theme song, what would it be?
I would say it needs to be You Can't Touch This by MC Hammer, because without consent, he realistically shouldn't.
Awesome.
Jer?
Yes.
With Hyatt.
Hi.
Your hair looks fantastic, by the way.
Thank you. It's a little bit different than my profile pic, but you know.
I mean, it's been a while since I've seen you, but I like it.
It's been a minute.
If your job came with a warning label,
yes,
what would it say?
It would say, caution, I will slow down your project. Only because I do believe in privacy, and privacy has to be taken seriously and thought out. And we've been in so many quick to engage projects. Privacy always falls behind the scenes, and I tend to slow it down because I'm like, hold up guys, we got to do this right, because we have to honor the customer, and that's why.
Fair enough, and you have slowed down a lot of projects I know of?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And Amir, what is one, this is not a fun question, but it might be. What is one governance and compliance rule or law that you secretly love?
I think I'll have to go with two-factor authentication. It's a hassle, but there is something reassuring about having the added layer of security.
Absolutely. I mean, I have to log in at least 4 times a day because of that two-factor authentication. Awesome. Well, now let's break it down and what this really looks like in the real world, right? So we all know this is a very complex environment, and it's a little challenging. So Vic at DirecTV, you work with multiple marketing teams, dozens of different platforms, identity structures, and you had a lot of legacy customer data across all of them, these platforms. What was the largest governance and compliance challenge that you faced, and how did y'all approach this?
Right, so DirecTV really struggled with identity fragmentation for a while. We had a tough time unifying all of our segmented customer IDs, and this is natural for a large company like ours. We purchased PrimeStar in 1999, purchased Ingrid Home in 2013, and it led to various billing and identity systems. So in order to solve this, we had to unify our identity structure, unify consent using Telium and OneTrust to ensure that there was a consistent and clear consent signals within DirecTV and to the end platform.
It sounds very complicated. It's probably why you got your promotion. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And then Amir, you work with many enterprises, and I love this because you've seen so many different implementations across the board. What's the most common gap that you see in data governance, and how can brands address them early?
One of the biggest gaps I see is the absence of a unified consent management framework. Teams operate in silos. You've got marketing doing one thing, web development doing another thing, and this leads to inconsistent consent management and honestly a compliance headache. So how do brands fix this early? By establishing a cross-functional data governance team, get marketing, IT, web development, and legal on the same page. It keeps data clean, reduces risk, and saves future headaches.
It's a tall order though, I'll be honest. That's a tall order to fail, because there's so many teams with strong opinions. I don't mean to distract for a little bit, but how does your team do that across functions? Like between IT and legal and everything else like that? Is it just getting all the big heads in the room and just making them talk?
Exactly, just everyone in the same room, and make sure that everything is in order.
Awesome, thank you. Sorry.
No, not at all. Jared, I mean, you come from Hyatt, but you've been with Telium for 15 15 years, I think,
I've been with
across
Hyatt for
different
a
types?
long time. I actually was talking to Mike Anderson the other day. I was the very first CDP customer when I worked at Ancestry. It was before CDP was even a term. It was just a thing that they were making. And so yeah, I've been with you guys for a long time.
2013, right?
Something like that, yeah.
So what are some of the unique challenges over the course of those years have you faced? I wouldn't say specifically with Hyatt, but you've been working with so many different brands. So.
You know, one of the hardest challenges when it comes to privacy is the continually evolving landscape. I've been with Telium for a long time, and the whole privacy, that was before GDPR was even fully deployed. And being able to understand what the requirements are in each region, both at the state and the country level, and how to apply that across the board is so challenging. And that was my question to Amir is, how do you really get people on the same board? Because everyone has strong opinions about what privacy actually means. There's also strong opinions of, do you need to honor privacy? There's a mentality out there that it's just the cost of business. What is the cost and benefit to actually adhering to privacy versus the lawsuits that come out of it if you don't do that, and how does that balance out? And that's been a challenge across all organizations because everyone has a different level of risk. And as much as we like to say, well, this is the law, doesn't really mean that's what you're going to do. And that's been always a challenge for me to be able to figure out how do you balance what is expected by the customer and how do you help the company succeed, because both need to be successful for the project to work.
No, you're absolutely right. And we talk about that, and compliance requires not only getting everyone talking and understanding what compliance means for your brand and for your initiatives. It also requires you to know who you're engaging with, right? So kind of resolving that piece of the puzzle that's really fragmented right now. So I'd love to know, like, especially with Hyatt, you were just speaking, very transient nature of your customer base, right? And we know that travel yes. customers are very finicky, and loyalty is kind of going in and out and all those things. Like, how do y'all maintain that accuracy for identity resolution, maintaining compliance, personalizing that guest experience, and just making sure that everything is buttoned up with those privacy regulations?
You know, it's a great question. I think the reality is that we're constantly evolving what we're doing with identity resolution. Like Vic was talking about, they have a lot of acquisitions. The hospitality industry is definitely in a consolidation phase. We are buying new brands all the time. Brands are being acquired by the big boys all the time, and they bring new challenges. What CRM system are you using? What is your data warehouse? What is your tools? What is your email platform? I think last time I heard Hyatt uses like 5 or 6 different email platforms because we've acquired so many brands. And trying to do consent and identity across that many brands and that many services is so challenging. And really what we're deciding is simple is the right answer. Simplify our tech stack, simplify what it is we need to actually act on, which really goes well with privacy because the more information you collect, the harder it is to comply across all your different platforms. But if you really simplify, what information are you collecting it? Why do you need it? The why in privacy is so important because so many project managers would say, collect everything. And I hate when people say everything because everything means nothing. It just means they don't have the understanding of the project to really be able to identify what is valuable and what is garbage. And no one wants to be a data hoarder. We've all been on those teams, right? Where you're just a data hoarder and you have terabytes and terabytes of useless data you cannot process.
Too much data is a problem.
Too much data is a real problem. You guys are probably too young for this, but the data warehouse, like the data lake, who here remembers the data lake, right? Or the data swamp? That's what we called it for a long time as well. We're hoarding as much data as we possibly could. And it was hard. It was hard to find useful data with that. And so at Hyatt, what we're realizing is simplicity and being very mindful about what we're collecting and why we're collecting it and how we're going to use it is the only path forward.
Yeah, kind of breaking it down back to basics.
Back to basics.
Simple, right?
Yep.
Awesome. Well, with that, Vic, I know that in DirecTV you've had a lot of struggles and challenges with your identity resolution there. I've been very open to some of those, but multiple marketing channels, multiple different identity solutions. How have you all come across to resolve those so that you don't and to communicate with your customers and engage with them without sacrificing any of that privacy?
So we perform what we like to call identity enrichment in order to increase our match rates and make sure that there's consistency across the end platforms and the devices that customers may use. So we take a consolidated customer identity structure. That's what I was just talking about earlier, where we kind of flatten everything down. And we take that identity information, the PII, and we send it over to a third-party company, in this case, Epsilon. They review that information and they send additional PII back to us, but in a hashed format. So we never have access to the raw PII. And then we take that hashed information and we use that to increase our match rates across the different platforms and to ensure that there's consistency across all of these multiple devices that customers may use. And we're able to do that in this way so that it doesn't sacrifice the privacy that our customers are really looking for, and it's not having to rely on invasive tracking or anything like that.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. But now I'm really interested in Amir, coming in from a partner angle and working across multiple brands. How do you recommend they map and govern their customer identities while ensuring compliance?
Well, consent management must be built into the ID resolution framework. What that means is only collect data when a user has explicitly agreed, and only collect what's necessary, and allow users to opt in or add of a specific consent choices, not just a blanket accept all.
Yes. Very good. So now we're getting into the fun part. Let's find the balance here, right? So now we know who we're engaging with. We've figured out how we're going to identify them across each of your different brands.
Yep.
Now it's the road where privacy and personalization meet. I know there's been a lot of conversations around this. Heidi touched on it in the session a few ago.
Yep.
So Amir, we'll start here. With all of these evolving regulations, you have to keep on top of it. You've worked with customers across the board. How can they future-proof their governance, right, and strategies and adopt new compliance challenges as they bubble up really quickly?
Yeah, so regulations like GDPR and CPRA are not static, they're evolving. One thing brands can do is to stay proactive by constantly monitoring regulatory updates, investing in training their staff, and just being ahead of the curve.
That's awesome.
And Jaron, hospitality again.
Yep.
You collect all the data, you have all the information.
I collect all the datas. All the datas.
How are you balancing tailored services and maintaining compliance?
Yep.
You know, across that from a personalization standpoint.
So hospitality is funny because we have long-term relationships with our customers, right? We're not just selling a pair of shoes and we're never going to see that customer again. When people engage with a hospitality company, they become their brand. There are people who are Marriott people, or people who are Hilton people, or Hyatt people, and you tend to become part of that brand, and that's where personalization really comes into play. And like we said earlier, I've been with Telium for a long time. I've been on literally dozens of integrations across so many different companies. And one of the things that I've learned is that authenticity is the most important part of the CDP. We're collecting information and we're creating these user profiles for authenticity. We're trying to have authentic relationships with our customers in ways that we can actually help them with what they need. We're not here to scam them. At least we shouldn't be here to scam them. If you're here to scam them, we'll have a conversation later. But we're here to build authentic relationships with our customers to help them understand what they really need. And so when we build personalization projects, we need to take it from the lens of why are we doing this? And is it helping the customer experience? Right? We're all marketers, we're data people, we have KPIs, we have metrics that we have to hit at the end of the day. And oftentimes we're challenged with, are we doing the right thing for the customer or we're doing the right thing for our metrics? Because if we're trying to show year-over-year increase in X, Y, or Z, we become so fixated on what those metrics are that we don't take a step back and say, why are we doing this for the customer? And so for personalization, again, when it comes to data collecting and we're using it for personalization and why, I always take the lens of, is it really needed? And is it building an authentic relationship with our customer and helping us build that right long-term relationship so they'll want to come back over and over again? Hospitality puts us in a funny spot because we just don't have as many chances to screw up like other brands do, and we have to get it right the first time.
And I think to Amir's point earlier, that's where the idea of the proactive buy-in for consent 100%. Is really great. Yeah, a customer who is bought in is going to be more engaged with giving you this information, being engaged in campaign and marketing efforts. And that's a lot of what the education helps as well with our marketing partners.
Absolutely.
If we can convince them that it's worth it to really focus on getting the buy-in from the customer so that we have better engagement, better results. It helps the company so much more in the long run.
And the buy-in is so interesting because people think the buy-in has to happen in the very first instance, the first time they meet the brand. And the truth is, people should honestly decline cookies right out of the gate until they've proven that they can honor their privacy and honor the brand and provide value to the customer. I'm not saying people really will. I hit yes all the time because I don't really want to think about it. I just want to read the article, right? But we should be able to demonstrate to the customer over and over again that we're a trustworthy brand. And if they declined consent at the first visit, give them an opportunity the second time, because if they come back and we've earned their trust, they may reconsent and we'll be able to start building that long-term relationship with them. Yeah.
Yes.
That brings up an interesting point. Vic, with DirecTV, you have streaming services. And so you all are being able, in every household, We stream a lot of sports in my household. I stream a lot of preteen movies. Mean Girl 2 is a favorite around my house right now with my 9-year-old. And so you get a lot of information about what each household is doing, and you can use that information for personalization. You don't always have to opt in straight away for that. How are y'all maintaining your compliance with that streaming information and data, and then adding that extra personalization for your customers?
So we have to do it regionally because the laws vary from state to state. But essentially what we do is we do really prioritize that zero-party data along with our first-party data to kind of identify behaviors and patterns. And with that, we're able to kind of tailor the streaming experience in a privacy-first way. This is done by kind of leaking each person's identity to their viewing behavior, as well as kind of like timing preferences, that sort of thing. And it gives us an ability to guide users not only in the midst of a campaign, so on sort of site, on Facebook or with an email, but it also allows us to guide them on site to relevant content and offers that would really be advantageous for them.
Interesting.
That's
I
awesome.
wonder what my profile looks like. That'll be so funny.
I'll pull it up.
But now to the question we're all interested in hearing about. Tealium has been at the forefront enabling all of y'all's brands and, in this data environment and these ecosystems. We've helped maintain compliance, governance. We've helped, fuel and arm personalization efforts, real-time, delayed. What platforms have you all been leveraging and really leaning into to help with your compliance and governance, as well as some of your personalizations? Kind of those solutions and strategies.
So DirecTV partners with OneTrust to create a unified consent layer. Sorry, Amir. It really helps us streamline our consent management, and it gives us kind of enhanced data governance. It's a lot easier to not make mistakes if your governance is just automated.
Yep.
That's one of our key partners. We do also, of course, work with other partners such as Salesforce, Marketing Cloud, Braze Platform.
And Tealium.
Well. And Tealium, of course.
Okay, we got that done. Amir, I'm really interested with you. Which platforms do you really rely on, and how are you leveraging kind of Tealium and the ecosystem to?
Yeah, Tealium has a robust consent management framework. It really gives you the ability to collect users' consent choices and apply it not only to the client-side tags in TIQ, but also to the server-side CAPIs like the Facebook CAPI, Pinterest CAPI, and Eventistry. And I've helped implement both the consent management platform and also the consent integrations, which is a cool feature of the consent management platform, and it gives you the ability to connect TIQ with top CMPs like OneTrust and TrustArc.
Yep. And that's what we do at Hyatt, actually, is we use OneTrust really deeply baked into Tealium, and that's part of the consent framework that we use there as well. Because we do have so many acquisitions, we do have a scattershot group of products that we use, but as new brands come on board, we do try to simplify and streamline and bring everything in, where it's a Tealium and OneTrust is the main point of data collection, and then we have a very complicated network of distribution through Tealium, through both EventStream and TIQ and AudienceStream, out with consent being one of the key points we push out to every single one of our vendors as well. It's important about having a single data point of collection. Too many points of data collection creates chaos. That's where simplicity really comes into play. But as long as you use Tealium and OneTrust as our main point of integration and data collection, it makes everything downstream so much easier to stay compliant.
Fair enough. Amir, I'd be really interested. Can you give us an example of a client success story using and leveraging Tealium for some of this consent management?
Yeah, I've helped implement, like I said, the Tealium's consent management platform for multiple clients, but one client in particular who's also a Tealium customer got consent management right by centralizing everything in TIQ. No hard-coded tags, no piggybacking, basically a full control of consent inside TIQ. Because a common issue I see is consent misalignment, where one team uses their TMS, rightfully so, to implement consent management, while you have another team that hard codes their pixels, totally bypassing those settings. And let's not forget about piggybacking, where you use one tag to fire other tags.
Yep.
So again, centralizing everything, preferably in your TMS platform, is the right way to go.
100%.
Love that.
Agree with that.
So now let's take a look ahead. Let's look at the future of kind of data governance. And I'd love to know from y'all, how do you see AI and automation playing in the role in streamlining consent management and identity resolution? Because those are the key elements that will help maintain compliance and governance. So we'll start with Vic.
I actually have a bit of an unpopular opinion for today's
I love a scandal.
introductory, yes. So I would say that there's a lot of benefits to AI, and if you have a clear use case, you can utilize it and be able to leverage it in a way that is really advantageous to your company. At the same time, it's important for us to understand where AI comes from and its limitations. AI is known to exacerbate already there biases. In 2019, there was an article in Science by Obermeyer who reviewed basically a healthcare algorithm, and he found that the algorithm itself prioritized white patients over people of color, even though in this particular data set, people of color typically needed more healthcare. And that's not the fault of the AI. It's an unintentional amplification of explicit bias that happens and can produce harmful outcomes. Additionally, we know that AI does carry a really large environmental impact, and we have an ethical responsibility. We want to ensure compliance with GDPR and CPRA, and there are ways that you can leverage AI to help with that. But you need to make sure that you have a clear and present use case, that you have a very clear strategy and a plan, because you can't just throw spaghetti at the wall and see if it sticks. It has too many repercussions. So that would be my opinion and caution.
I love it. I love it. Amir?
Yeah, AI, I guess it has the potential to make a great impact. One way it can do so is by dynamically adjusting consent as new information comes in or when a new regulatory law is enacted. So yes.
AI makes me nervous from two perspectives. One, from the business use case of how do we use AI to understand the customer's intent. The other side is how is AI going to be used in the hospitality industry. When OpenAI a few weeks ago, I think many of you probably saw it, they demonstrated one of these travel agents that they're developing, where a customer went in and just said, I want a flight and a hotel in Cancun or something. I can't remember all the different terms that they had. And what AI did is it went out and it went through all the different airlines and hotels and resorts, and it found the perfect experience for the customer, and it took the customer to the order page, which is really interesting to us as analysts because it completely took us out of the game. There wasn't a need for a website anymore. The AI is the one that did the research, not the customer, so there was no data collected about anything, and it's taken directly to the order page. And so what we realized then is that if AI really is creating these agents that can do the work for the customer, just walking down the street, booking a cruise without even going to the website, we're out of a job. And that's scary. Like, how do we adapt to a situation where the website becomes middleware and is no longer relevant in that situation? That makes me nervous. And it makes me nervous because who's really using the software at that point? Is AI on behalf of the customer? And does the AI's preferences translate? Like, do my preferences go through AI and what data is collected about what my interests are? And how is that applied down the road as well? There's so many questions out there that makes me really, really nervous. But on the customer side, that's one thing. I'm very perplexed by that one because I don't know how to answer that one. But on the customer side, I think AI is going to help us be able to make sure that we're always compliant and be able to fill in the gaps of where there's oversight to have AI kind of go through and double check what we're doing, when and where and how, and make sure we really are being that authentic, partner with our customers to make sure we're doing the right thing at the right time.
No, exactly. I love that. I'm in sales at Telium, and I don't always cross my I's or dot my T's, whatever that analogy is. And I love the use of AI to help go in and double check all of your data sets and your models to make sure that, to your point, are there any gap checks that we need to miss? Is everybody here checked the box yet? We're reaching out to and leveraging that to kind of double check all of your work.
Yeah, it definitely grants you a lot of flexibility.
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
Well, any additional leaving words for us? I think we've made it through the frontier unscathed.
We made it through the frontier.
With 1 minute to go.
No, thank you for this. This has been awesome. It's important to talk about privacy, and I'm glad we're taking the opportunity to carve out a little bit of time to talk about this.
Hope we had a little fun doing it.
Great.
Yeah.
Amen. Awesome.